Hello everyone, today I'm here with Paul Rietzl. How it's going?
Very well, good. How are you? Good evening.
I'm doing well, I guess. For people who don't know, Paul Rietzl is a Hall of Famer with, well, the information might not be correct, but Wiki says that you have 15 GP top 8s with 2 wins and 4 Pro Tour top 8s with 1 win. Do you think that's accurate?
Could be. Yeah, you know, the GP top 8s is something you don't really kind of keep track of over time, but the Pro Tour top 8's definitely true, and yeah, all very much in the past at this point.
Yeah, like people who are just following the arena tournaments and stuff might not know you, but definitely when I was younger, you were one of the best players. You know, when I was watching coverage and stuff, you were often out there, and I'm very happy that I can talk to you today. So yeah.
Yeah, pleasure to get to know you. I actually saw your interview with Matt Sperling, my very good friend, and so yeah, I was excited to sit down and chat with you today.
So before we get to Magic, I often ask people what they do outside of Magic a little bit so that I get to know them better. You mentioned that you work for Tesla. You know, I assume that everyone knows, but maybe someone doesn't. It's like a car company created by Elon Musk. Is that right?
Yeah, we actually think of ourselves more as like a clean energy company, right? So electric vehicles, solar power, battery technology, basically trying to get the world off of fossil fuels as quickly as possible.
Mm-hmm. How long are you actually working there? I know that like someone told me before that you were like a headhunter for like a different company. Is that right?
Yeah, so I've been with Tesla now for about 3 years, and before that I worked for a what we call a retained search firm in the United States for about 10 years, and so my whole career has been in the recruiting or you know, talent acquisition space, but I transitioned about 3 years ago from working for like a consulting firm into now obviously for, you know, one of the biggest companies. So yeah, I really enjoy it. I love connecting with people who they would never normally have thought of working at Tesla, didn't even know that we were necessarily hiring for something in their space or in their discipline until I reach out to them, and now all of a sudden they're here and working for Tesla.
So you're mainly just recruiting new people, am I understanding correctly? Yeah,
my job is basically there are 2 different types of recruiters. There are those that like read applications and look at people's resumes. You know, that they're looking at inbound talent, people that are trying to get a job with Tesla. And then my job is more to hunt people. So I actually try to find people who are not looking for a job necessarily, who don't even know that we're potentially hiring. And I try to fill some of the most difficult to fill positions at the company by going out and reaching out to people, oftentimes like totally out of the blue.
Do you actually like understand, I don't know, how to like build a car or like anything that a company is doing? Because I assume it must be like hard to like know which people you want if you don't necessarily have the expertise to like, you know, for the things that the company needs. How does that work out?
Yeah, I've always said that like Tesla is like 80,000 brilliant people, none of which know how to do anyone else's job, you know? So like I recruit for, you know, obviously some super people, and I always say like, how does this work? And they try to explain it to me in like simple terms, and it's like, I don't really understand every single aspect of every kind of mechanical engineering and battery technology and electric vehicle motors and things like that. But on the flip side, they don't understand how I find some of the people that I find in the deep dark corners of the internet. So actually the truth is that before I joined Tesla, I had never driven a Tesla or an electric vehicle of any kind. And like when I first joined the company and they asked me, hey, do you mind, just as wasn't really part of my job, but just as a day at work, basically, can you drive this $100,000 car from here to there? And I had no idea how to turn it on or like operate the car. So I'm sitting there on my phone Googling, how do you drive a Tesla while I worked for Tesla? So obviously, and I've learned how to drive the car. So yeah.
Are you actually like usually accurate with your choices, or you know, how often does happen that you hire someone who doesn't actually perform as well afterwards?
Yeah, good question. I'm pretty good once somebody's actually been hired and starts with the company. And it's not just me, right? But putting people into a process and kind of getting them introduced to hiring managers and business leaders and other directors within the company. So they're going through like a multi-step, very robust recruiting process where they're evaluated on like technical skills and communication skills and all of that kind of thing. So it's not just like a me making a thumbs up, thumbs down. I would certainly be a lot less accurate if that were the case, because there's certainly plenty of people that I love that end up not being the right fit. But once somebody actually gets through the whole process, we have a pretty good track record of that person being successful.
That's good. Another thing that you mentioned when I asked you is that you have a, I think, 18 months daughter. I assume that if you're working a full-time job and you have a daughter, you probably don't have that much time to play Magic. Is that right, or are you playing it all?
Actually, I have a son, 18-month-year-old son.
I'm sorry.
Oh, that's okay. And yeah, so that has certainly been, that is like my hobby over the last year and a half. So honestly, the transition of Magic away from the types of tournaments that would really interest me, the large, very prestigious live in-person, gatherings, if you will, into like the more online world has been pretty much perfectly timed with I couldn't play anyway, you know what I mean? Like I wouldn't be able to like pursue Magic at the very highest level, even if I wanted to. So it's really like I haven't had to give anything up, and I still will play from time to time, but mostly limited now. I don't keep up with the constructed formats too much, and certainly, of course, my priorities are my family and my job.
Yeah, it's interesting that you're mentioning limited. I think that maybe like a year ago or 2 years back, you had like an insane run on Pro Tours. I don't know what was the actual record, but I think you lost like 1 or 2 matches. I always thought of you as like a constructed aggro player, but you were just like winning so much in limited. Like, what, like, were you always good in limited, or did you just get lucky during those 2 years, or like what happened there?
Well, obviously got lucky during that streak. I won something like 20 matches in a row or something like that at the Pro Tour in limited, which is just absurd. Like that's impossible. That can't be right. 20 matches in a row, something like that. Yeah, it was a pretty crazy streak at the Pro Tour of winning matches, and probably can't be 20, but somewhere like over a dozen matches in a row. Obviously, whenever you win any streak at the Pro Tour of that nature, luck is a huge part of it. You can think about like the best players in the world have 65-70% win expectation. So to win 2 matches in a row is lucky, just by definition, right? Like 70% twice is 49%, right? So it's like, you're already getting lucky to win 2 matches in a row, much less like go on a streak. I used to be really bad at limited. Like I was the guy who, after day 1 ended and I was out of the Pro Tour, people would try to seek me out to try to gamble against me in money draft, because they knew that I was like easy money. But like I just decided to get good at it after a while. I just decided that like that if limited is going to be at every Pro Tour, I can't just be going 3-3 or 2-4 in the limited portion, have any chance of making top 8s. And so I really kind of figured out what works for me just in terms of draft, and practiced a lot and built some principles, and eventually got good.
Yeah, it just must be, I don't know, I cannot imagine that you've been one of the best pros for such a long time, then you have like this insane limited streak, and then like all of a sudden you just have to kind of stop like doing Magic at all. Like, I don't know, how do you feel about that?
No, it's perfect, because they got rid of limited anyway, so it wouldn't be an issue.
I see.
No, it's totally fine. To me, Magic has always just been a hobby. It's just been something that was like a part of my life, and I've always had, to varying degrees, but mostly always had a healthy relationship with Magic, such that like I never take it too seriously. I've never like thought about doing it professionally, anything of that nature. And so like, when I was in a match, or when I had time to prepare for tournaments, like I took it very seriously in terms of I wanted to win and be competitive. Like I'm not going to fly all over the world, and just like throw it away. But ultimately, it was just a part of my life and never something huge. And like right now, it's not really a part of my life. But that doesn't mean in the future maybe it'll not be part of my life again. Like I could always come back. It's not like playing professional sports where like I've lost my fastball or I can't run fast anymore, and all of a sudden I can't play. Like even though I'm getting older and my brain is slowing down, there are ways to compensate for that with experience and institutional knowledge that I think if I did have the opportunity to make a comeback, I think I would have at least a chance.
So since the beginning, you always like kind of perceived it as a hobby, but it just like happened to be kind of good. I made some research on Wikipedia. It said that you started in, I have it written here, Game Store Your Move Games or something.
Yeah.
And eventually at age 16, you played the first Pro Tour in Osaka, and then you topped a GP in Anaheim. Is that right?
Anaheim, yeah.
And
Games is really like in Anaheim, was my first GP top 8, and actually Ben Stark conceded to me in the last round of that to allow me to make that top 8 apply for the Pro Tour. So
did you lose that match, or did he concede before the actual match?
No, he conceded to me. He had so many wins, and we had already been kind of friends, like being younger people in the competitive scene, and so he probably conceded to me because he thought I was a good matchup in the top 8. But yeah, you mentioned Your Move Games, and it's funny now in retrospect, because when I started, Your Move Games was world famous. Like they were the strongest. They were the strongest team on the Pro Tour. Darwin Castle, Rob Doherty, David Humphreys, like Justin Gary, Brian Kibler, all those guys were Your Move Games on that team, and many more names that are not like Hall of Famers, but in the tier kind of beneath that. And it just so happened that where I grew up was 10 minutes away from Your Move Games. And you just think about like the random way that life works out sometimes, if I grew up 30 minutes from Your Move Games, I probably never get into Magic at all. But instead I'm 10 minutes away from like probably arguably at the time, maybe the top shop for Magic, for competitive Magic in the United States, which is just random chance.
Does it still exist? I don't think I've ever heard of it. Like it's the first time that I heard the name.
I don't know if they have a brick and mortar store anymore. So I haven't. I moved away from Boston, maybe 15 years ago. But I know that Rob and Darwin and those guys are still in the game business. Like they do game design. They build both card games and board games, and they've been very successful with it. But I don't think they have like a traditional, what you would think of as like a local game store environment anymore. But I'm not 100% sure about that.
Mm-hmm. So you made a couple of GP top 8s. I think you like did pretty well at the Pro Tour as well, like some top 16 or something. But you hadn't have like a breakout top 8. And then in 2007, you kind of stopped playing for a couple of years. Why did you stop playing? Did just like something happen in your life, or like what was going on?
Yeah, I graduated from college. So basically, very early on in college, I was playing a little bit of Magic, 2003, 2004, a little bit in 2005. As I got deeper into college, I was doing the college thing, and then I picked up a job, and I was a young 20-something living in Los Angeles at the time, and just the idea of just playing Magic all the time wasn't very appealing to me, so it wasn't a conscious decision that I made to stop playing. Like I still would attend the occasional Pro Tour if I qualified for it, but it just, as throughout my life, like Magic has ebbed and flowed in terms of importance, and that was probably like the low point in terms of how much I cared. And it honestly, until when I got back on the Pro Tour, was because they brought a Grand Prix to Los Angeles, and I didn't even know about it a week before the Grand Prix was going to happen until Mark Herberholt says, I'm flying to Los Angeles for a Grand Prix. I'm like, where is it? And it turned out it was, again, close to where I was living, or I would never have gotten back on the Pro Tour. So
you just like randomly spiked a GP that was in your hometown, so you just kind of played, and then you just kept qualifying. So like you didn't even want it to like be there, but you just like kind of had to go. Is that what happened?
Basically, yeah. I remember.
That's crazy.
I won a Grand Prix trial, which was the first tournament that I had played in about 3 years. And then round 4, I played against this Czech guy, Martin Juza, who had like beat up sleeves, just like not re-sleeve for the tournament, like couldn't care less. And like, I didn't know what was in the format. Like I didn't know what decks. He beat me really badly. Round 5. So like back then you had to make 7 and 2 to make day 2. And I won like my next, 9 matches or something like that. Got back on the Pro Tour. I think I qualified for like the next 40 or something like that after that. So yeah.
That's crazy. You like after you came back, you top 8 4 PTs. You even won one in Amsterdam. But you're at the same time you're saying that you like weren't ever that serious. And it's just like did something happen, or maybe you just got better because you were just like older and you like understood the game more, even though you like maybe weren't trying as hard, or like it just seems crazy that like all of a sudden you're like top 8 for PTs if you're like not trying that much.
I mean, like part of it is that like, Magic as a hobby definitely rewards people who have more experience, because a lot of like sequencing and gameplay comes down to pattern recognition. Like even all the mechanics that exist today are just different versions of other mechanics that have existed in the past, right? Like if you played Time Spiral Remastered, you probably suspend something or thinking a little bit of foretell when you do it, right? These are not that different mechanics, suspend and foretell. And so I definitely built up some knowledge in the years that helped me through years of playing Magic. Like suspend, foretell, like those are pretty similar mechanics. And if you play for long enough, eventually you will, develop those sorts of muscles that allow you to sequence things correctly. But I also think like if you look at anybody who's had a lot of success on the Pro Tour, anybody who's had success at the Pro Tour, basically, they are going to be amongst the luckiest players, right? Historically, it's just like there are a lot of matches that I've played, whether it's playing for top 8 or winning a Pro Tour, where like you miss one land drop, one card draw comes the other way. And instead of like a Hall of Famer with 4 top 8s, I'm like another guy with 1 top 8, So, I think that, yes, I got pretty good for a short period of time and maybe was one of the better players, but also just ran so far above expectation in like the key spots, that like that's why, that's the difference between me and like another 500 people that were almost or roughly as good as I was during that time period. So I have no illusions about that. Yeah,
the Pro Tour that you won, I think you haven't lost a game in the entire top 8, right? You just went 9-0. Yeah, maybe do you maybe think that it was also because you just had like really good decks because you were just testing with really good people?
For sure, that's a huge part of it. Yeah, I mean, like when at that point, like getting a Gabriel Nassif deck, you should pay thousands of dollars just to have access to it, right? At the Pro Tour, and I just happened to be friends with him and was able to kind of collaborate with him for that tournament, and he gave me his final deck list. That's a huge advantage in that time. These days when you talk about the last 12 years, now like standard and modern, these formats get iterated so frequently because people play so much that like you almost copy a deck list off the internet and be pretty successful. But back then there was like real edge to be had by just having a way better deck than everybody else. And that tournament, we definitely just had a way better deck than everybody else, which is, it feels good, right? When that's the case, it's not going to happen. I've definitely had way worse decks than everybody else, but I prefer having a better deck.
Yeah, you won with a mono white aggro. I think like maybe 2 Pro Tours after that, or like very soon after that, you even competed with Boros aggro. Like everyone was saying that Step Links is like your card and stuff like that. You're kind of known for just like loving aggro decks. Like, why do you think that is? Do you just like them, or you think you're better at playing them? I think that even in draft, you usually like just draft aggro, right?
Yeah, well, I think probably some of it has to do with like my ability to prepare for tournaments. If you're going to play a control deck or certainly a combo deck in the tournament, you need to know about like every sort of corner case that can happen. If you're playing a control deck or a combo deck, basically, you have to know about every single corner case, right? You have to know about like what sideboard cards they could have, what sort of threats, and how to deal with certain like weird things that might happen during the match. If you're playing an aggro deck and your goal is to get them from 20 to 0, like about general things that can happen. Maybe they have a sweeper, maybe they have a life gain spell, maybe they've got some wall or whatever. But like by and large, you're figuring out how do I sequence against like a range of things that can happen. You don't necessarily always need to know specific corner cases and every single thing that can happen. And so if you just have like good Magic fundamentals, you know how to mulligan correctly, you know how to sequence your lands and your creatures for the first few turns, to use your removal judiciously, like the types of things that you learn playing limited, you can be successful playing an aggro deck in constructed. I think most people overthink limited. They think that like limited is about like this crazy combination of spells, or to like build a combo deck, or that everything needs to be super synergistic. And really, like, a large percentage of limited games come down to people like playing creatures on curve, attacking, like, and then having a removal spell for the one thing that's kind of slowing them down. Like Martin, we talked about earlier, like he's the king of that, right? Like not messing with any of these build around uncommons. He just wants 2-drops, and like my philosophy is very much aligned with his in that regard.
That makes sense. So you were inducted into the Hall of Fame, but you mentioned several times during this interview that you never really like cared that much about Magic. Was that still like a big deal for you? Was it something that you maybe aspired for or cared for, or was it just like a nice upside, but that you didn't really care that much?
Yeah, I mean, I never played Magic because I wanted to make the Hall of Fame or like get any accolades or anything like that. And I never really thought that it was something that was going to happen for me. Like even like winning the Pro Tour, I really thought this is going to be it. This is the pinnacle. I've won the Pro Tour, and now I'm going to go back and fade back into irrelevance. But then, like, the next Pro Tour, when I made top 8 of that one as well, and now I've got 3 top 8s, all of a sudden, like, you can't help but, like, think, okay, maybe this is kind of a possibility, And so it was like a conscious goal, but, like, I also, again, I probably have one of the weakest Hall of Fame resumes, just, like, objective people that are there, Like, okay, the truth is that I had a lot of Americans and people around the world who, like, voted for me because liked me, or they thought that like they were friends with me, or they respected the fact that like I don't cheat. And so they basically gave me the benefit of the doubt with what was very much like a borderline Hall of Fame resume. So it's a huge honor, but not something that I ever was targeting or thought was going to be realistic.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's going to be all for today. Thanks for your time. It was fun talking with you. We had some issues with the connection, but I hope it will end up fine. So sorry about that, but
no problem. Enjoy chatting with you. Sorry about the connectivity issues, and hope you have a great rest of your day.
Yeah, you too. If you guys like the video, please click on the like and subscribe button, and see you next time. Bye bye.